Yes, he did.
Well, if you don't know what fair is, you can't make it. Unacceptable by any reason.
Donnybrook is made possible by the support of the Betsy and Thomas Patterson Foundation and the members of 9PBS.
Thank you very much for joining us for this edition of Donnybrook on the St. Patrick's Day Eve, if there is such a thing. Welcome aboard, everybody. Let's meet our panelists before we dive into the topics. She's Wendy Wiese from the Big 550 KTRS. Bill McClellan from the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. Ray Hartmann, founder of the Riverfront Times, and from the St. Louis American, Alvin Reid. And Alvin, we're going to start with you because since we last appeared here around this table, there have been some developments in the Circuit Attorney Kim Gardner's office. First of all, experienced attorney Marvin Tier announced that he's leaving, and now they say that the office is down to just 4 experienced attorneys to handle some of the most violent cases, and there's about 160 of those. And then it was announced that Circuit Attorney Kim Gardner was hiring a lawyer from Harvard who actually once was an attorney for Harvey Weinstein. And maybe most importantly, yesterday she responded to the Quo Warranto petition by the Attorney General of the state, and she said, look, I may have had problems with my office. Some of those problems were caused by subordinates, but what happened in the office doesn't rise to the level of me being removed. What'd you think?
Well, it was a lot, you know, just kind of like every week these last 3 or 4 weeks. But really good argument. I mean, I guess none of us want to be in a situation where our argument is you can't remove me for my incompetency. Now, I'm not saying that she's totally, you know, incompetent, but that's the argument. The statute says what you're saying you're removing me for, you can't remove me for. So maybe the state Supreme Court will, you know, step in and say, like, quite frankly, we are going to dismiss the case because you really don't have one, Mr. Attorney General. Really surprised that Marvin Tier left. I just don't know where that one came from. I don't, you know, maybe it was just too much, you know, too multiple times in that office, and I really didn't sign on for that. But it does kind of leave her in a situation where if you only have 5, and I was the best possibly of the 5, and I just say I'm done. I mean,
I think with his level of experience and with the amount of respect that you have in the community for him, I could see where after a while it would just be like, you know what, I've got X number of years left in this, and it's just not worth it. So I think that when St. Charles County Prosecutor Tim Lomar, he was quoted in the paper recently as saying that he had offered assistance to Kim Gardner's office, and that it never went anywhere. You can have troubles as a circuit attorney, but the people's business, I think, still should be attended to, and she's got to get help from somewhere.
Well, I think the city needs to take over the office and do something. I just don't like the idea of the state coming in. Oh, we're going to look like Selma, Alabama in 1955 if the unelected white attorney general has his way and throws out the twice elected black city prosecutor. I mean, even though Kim Gardner has been a disaster in the office, I just don't think a state takeover is going to be very successful.
Well, it's not. I don't think it's going to happen for the reasons you were saying, Alvin, and that is, you know, imagine the precedent that sets. If, there's 115 prosecutors, any one of which could, in the judgment of the Attorney General, if the standard is we think you're incompetent, you know, and that could hold the day in court. Really, it's a horrible precedent for the rest of the state. And there's no question what this is about. It's political, and
she has been a disaster, though, right?
You can, you know, I think she needs to do a better job running her office. Okay, but I think that she was elected, and I do think that's not just a sentence. It means something. She's the duly elected representative of the people of St. Louis, and we can't just have a bunch. even leaving aside the fact that we have one of the worst-run state governments in the country, claiming that, oh, what we really need is for them to take over, and even just as badly, they want to take over the police department again, and it's just it's
Hang on a
ludicrous.
second, Ray. I think that there are lawmakers in Jeff City that are questionable, but I think actually a lot of the state employees are great. I would not say that the state government is poorly
I'd
run.
say that- oh, yes, I would.
I thought you said you think our state government.
I don't think this. I think there's a lot of wonderful state employees who
Yeah.
happen to.
You're
who
saying
don't
the
deserve.
legislative
I'm
side.
talking about the management of
Oh,
our
yeah.
state government because I
Well,
mean,
I don't know. I mean,
I think it's amazing
Okay.
we get the services we get out of the 50th ranked pay people in pay
Yeah.
in the government.
Well, be that as it may, Bill does make a good point, and I think it was Scott Rosenblum who said this week, look, they used to have 16 attorneys who were prosecuting homicides. Now they're down to 4. And, I know, Bill, you think it's a racial thing, but Rachel Prudy has come out against her. She's a state representative.
The
and
ethical
the mayor
society,
of
the police, who's
yeah,
black.
the mayor
I
of
don't
the
know.
city.
The only thing that I think is racial, Charlie, is I think that some of the motivation of the outstate Republicans, I think this is a campaign issue to take things away from the city, and I think there's a racial component in that.
And
I'm not defending Kim Gardner at all.
It's hard to measure what's in someone's heart. I mean, when she went after Eric Greitens, was that racial?
Well, let me
because
ask you a
he was
question.
white and she was black?
Wait, let me ask you a question, Charlie. If there was a county, city, run just like St. Louis and everything were the same, I doubt that the legislature would be moving to take that person's job from them. So you tell me what the difference is someplace else and here. St. Charles County, the
maybe
prosecutor,
they would.
it may have been adjudicated, but I mean, St. Charles County's got a pending DWI that he's dealing with. Now that may have been adjudicated.
But over and above that, as one
But
prosecutor
now let me
to
finish.
another,
Okay.
you're offering
If
to
I
help.
can finish, if this were a Democratic state and they decided, well, we're not going to have anybody with a DWI serving as prosecutor, we got the votes, and we're going to tell the Attorney General to do this, that, and the other thing, people would be, like, up in arms. It would be political, like we said.
But this is so counterproductive. When we're talking about upwards, and we don't know the exact number, it was $1 billion was thrown out. When you're talking about economic development, and then the biggest part of law enforcement is at odds with the circuit attorney's office. If I am somebody who's looking at St. Louis as a possible or prospective site for my business, I'm not doing it.
Okay, but
Can I say one thing, Charlie? There's 2 tracks with Kim Gardner. There's the competency question, which reasonable
Which
people...
is huge.
Okay, fine. That's one of the tracks. The other track
If you're
that...
talking about a surgeon,
Excuse
is
me.
competent. Okay.
There's questions about how well she runs her office. The other track that informs much of this political stuff is the fact she's part of a national movement of reform prosecutors, and she's quite respected in that context. She is one of the more, interestingly, so is Wesley Bell.
Let me stop you for a minute, Ray. I think that
It's both.
It might be a little more nuanced than I make it out to be, but essentially, Kim Gardner has been a disaster in that office, and the criminal justice system is broken here. And to lump her in with other progressive prosecutors, I don't
Bill,
think that's fair.
It just so happens that Texas and some of the other states are doing this exact same thing, where you have Republican legislatures going after Democratic mayors and circuit attorneys, prosecuting attorneys.
Happened yesterday in Houston, where the school board was taken over by
This is part of a
Austin.
national trend
Yes,
in the
it is.
MAGA Republican movement, and so that's why I think it is important to remember that other track. You can make the case fine on the one,
But if she hadn't gone from 16 to 4 prosecutors,
I'm not
as you said, low-hanging fruit.
She needs to. She can do, but she can do better without
getting
being.
back to the original point. She made the case that you don't have a case to remove me from my job.
And he's right.
That's all I'm saying. And that's all the debate really
Right.
need be.
Right.
Bill, I want to ask you about something that Governor Pritzker signed in Illinois this week in the Prairie State, and that is now all workers, if you work 40 hours, you get an hour of paid leave that you can use any way you want. I mean, you can go play golf, you can go to your kid's recital, you can go to the doctor, you can stay home sick, whatever it is. And you can accumulate up to 5 days per year. The small businesses are saying, do we get reimbursed for this? No. It's going to be borne by the businesses. What do you think of this?
I don't like it, and you know, and I'm a union person, and I like the workers. I've never owned a business, but I don't like it. I mean, I think that you should get sick pay, generous sick pay, so that when you're sick, you can take leave. If a company wants to give you maternity or paternity leave, that's great. But just to say, and of course vacation, but on top of all that, just to say, oh, I'm not going to come in on tomorrow, and I got to be paid for it. That doesn't seem right to me.
It seems right to me. In Europe and most other Western countries, there's way more leave provided.
Maybe they have more vacation. I mean, I'm for vacation, but leave, it just... I don't get the idea.
I don't think most people fake the reasons for the leave anyway. I think it's.
Then let's just leave it like that. Let's just leave it at people faking the reasons. I agree with Bill, and I think this has to do with Governor Pritzker, the billionaire's political aspirations. And there's this visual that I have. Remember in The Grinch, Who Stole Christmas? Remember the little tiny puppy carrying the big giant sleigh and the Grinches? The little tiny puppy to me is the small business person in Illinois. It's like, yeah, let's just let the businesses take care of it. They're already struggling in a post-pandemic world.
I hear you, but at the same time,
Seriously.
I still believe that the business owner prioritizes the business, and the hourly worker or the employee is far from caught up. I think that when it comes to who is doing what at work and how long they are working, I don't have a problem with this, because I still think that people do their job to a point where it goes way beyond the 37 and a half, and they don't go into the boss's office and say like, hey, I worked extra. Now I either need overtime or some time off. They work those things out. I think this could be worked out.
And I was a small business owner for decades. It was never likened to a puppy once. Never. Not once.
Hey, Pitbull.
Yeah, maybe.
Wait, you know, I think if you work overtime, you should be paid overtime. And I'm anxious for any reporter on The American who's watching this to just say, well, I've used all my vacation already, but...
Mr. Reid.
But Mr. Reid, I'm taking a couple days off.
Well, easy for me to talk, because I ain't paying them.
Wendy Wiese, how about back to the land of Lincoln? There's a proposal that would eliminate or prohibit being on Zoom while driving.
I'm sorry. This is just hilarious to me. And then what's next? A proposal saying that thou shalt not shave your legs while you're driving? Of course you shouldn't be Zooming while you're driving. I mean, we have got such a high rate of accidents. We were just talking about this a couple of weeks ago. Not in, you know, we're talking about Missouri, or we're talking about Illinois now, but we were talking about Missouri. No, you shouldn't be Zooming.
Well,
while you're...
what else? I mean, can you listen to the Big 550 KTRS
well, of
while
course,
driving?
Of course.
Jennifer and Wendy, weekdays?
Absolutely, but that's a productive use of one's time.
You can also do that at 10 o'clock, 2 o'clock.
And if you have to do this, or if you're worrying about eye contact, I just think that's ridiculous. Drive when you're driving, and then, you know,
the phrase,
do the rest of the business when you arrive.
The phrase is distracted driving, I think, that should apply to, and one can become better educated listening to Jennifer and Wendy without being distracted. I mean, you can still be,
really,
with your eyes on the road. It is, it's a little hard to imagine that a Zoom call.
Be nice.
No, I'm saying that a Zoom call, I mean...
If the phone is mounted on the dashboard and you're just taking part, I actually have done this before.
Well, there you go. There you go.
I'm not advocating it, but
you can't be.
People,
can you watch a movie too while you're driving?
What?
Can
you don't want to talk to people in the car? You don't want to listen to a book on tape? Jennifer and Wendy,
you can listen to a book with your eyes on the road. You can talk to people with your eyes. The whole point of handheld.
Do we really think that the police officers and state troopers in Illinois have the time to be enforcing this? I mean,
I would
really?
think they should.
Well,
if
Well,
he's
they might be
driving.
taking leave now.
Yeah, that's right. They might be off.
No, seriously, if I was a police officer and somebody seriously was driving down the road doing this,
Right.
I'd pull them over.
He-
And I might just
would.
say, like, look, the next time we'll be mopping you up. So
That's
please,
right.
please stop. You know,
right.
just please.
Yeah.
Right.
And there's laws in a lot of. I don't know if they have it in Missouri or not, but a lot of places you cannot be on the phone. At least
That's correct.
You can't
physically.
text in Kirkwood.
Right,
you know?
but and you shouldn't be able to.
shouldn't,
Now,
yeah,
I
man.
don't think that prohibits you from having a hands-free call or talking to a fellow passenger, which I guess you could technically say distracts you. But anything that by definition causes you to have to look at something other than the road, I would think
You
is
don't
not
have
cool.
to look at the Zoom screen, and sometimes being on a Zoom panel is just as passive as driving. You know, you may not be the participant or the host; you're just there listening in.
Now the Zoom is out.
You get
Tough ground here.
an A for effort, Charlie.
Wendy,
you get an A for effort.
what do you think about Phil Brooks, a longtime state capitol reporter who wrote a piece that was in the Missouri Independent saying that Governor Parson and others in the executive wing of the state capitol have taken away the preferred parking for members of the media. I think this is another shot against the media, and I think that the media have a role to play, and that it's so jammed there in that section of Jefferson City, and the media is so important that there should be designated spots for those reporters, and that it's petty on the governor's part to take those away.
I have so much respect for Phil Brooks. I mean, he has been doing this job and doing it brilliantly for a very, very long time. But I think when it comes to the aforementioned, the people's business, which is what you're doing as a reporter, I just think, I think from 30,000 feet, this seems kind of silly. You know, you took my preferred parking. That just seems silly. The job that you're doing is to report on what is going on at the state capitol. It's not about whether or not the coffee decanters are warm or, you know, your preferred parking. And I know that's not how he means it. I believe, though, that's the perception.
And it is petty, but I think it's just one of those things where, like, yeah, come on, man, think about when we were younger.
Yes,
and
that's
nothing
right.
would stop us from doing our jobs. And you just got to hearken back to that. Also, hey, you know, don't get mad, get even. I would request every parking contract the state had signed in the last 25 years.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, we will see,
Yeah, we
Mr.
will.
Governor. Right. I said, like, yeah, you
We'll
want to
be
be
doing
petty.
some reporting.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I thought it was a
Yeah.
bit overstated.
I did. Certainly the public isn't interested in, you know, the Jefferson City press corps
Having to
not
walk a little
having.
farther,
Yeah,
right.
yeah. So.
Well, I'll be the one that shows a little respect for Mr. Brooks. I mean, besides just saying it. No, I mean, I think, and I understand, this is not something that's going to play well necessarily with folks, but I think it's good that he called out the governor, because he is such a kind of a down the middle kind of guy. He's not somebody that's ever accused of partisanship.
No, never.
And,
I agree.
And this is a governor that wanted to criminally use, I called the highway patrol.
No, that was the
journalists.
case. That was the case.
No,
when
but I
he
was
wanted
saying,
Josh
this
Renaud.
is the same
That's
guy.
right.
He
That's
went
right.
after Josh Renaud from your paper and wanted to sick the highway patrol, which I thought was possibly one of the
Because
worst
he
things
did
he's
the
done.
right thing by alerting them.
By alerting folks to the leak of DESI's database that exposed a bunch of Social Security numbers to teachers. But this is the same guy who wanted to do that. He wanted to. There was another case in which he was definitely, I can't remember which one. It was something he wanted to criminalize journalism, and he's just. It's disappointing because Mike Parson came into office with a reputation basically being a nice guy, and here he is lame duck. But I think that I do think when somebody is down the middle as Phil Brooks takes this personally, I think it really is something that will resonate with a lot of people in Jeff City.
We need these reporters. They don't make a lot of money. I'm surprised we're all not supporting them. And maybe I feel a little bit over the top on this one because I heard Maria Keena's story this morning on KMOX. She went to the Schlafly Library in the Central West End to cover a community meeting open to the public, hosted by the mayor, Tashara Jones, and Chief Tracy, the police chief. And she was kicked out last night for soliciting. They said there's no solicitors.
What?
So they said, be on your way. It was this morning's KMOX report. I thought, you know, we got to stand up for people like this.
Solicitors.
Charlie, that's a different issue.
No, you got to support your brothers and sisters in the trenches.
Charlie, you were asking about losing preferred parking.
Yes.
And that is a much different issue than the governor trying to get Josh Renaud
That's
arrested.
right.
It's a
That's
different
right.
issue than your colleague, your former colleague, getting thrown out of a public meeting. I mean,
For
Well, it
soliciting.
is and it isn't, because we're living in a time
Amen,
where we had a former president declared the press the enemy of the people. And no, I
Come on,
think,
yes,
I
seriously,
think,
Ray,
I
Ray.
know,
You
I'm
all are
sorry.
just taking
when
this to a
there was
level
a
it doesn't need
story,
to go to.
Right.
No,
Yeah,
I'm not, because I think that Mike Parson is very much part of that.
Places.
Nah, I
Deal
don't think
with
it's
it.
that simple. I don't think it's that simple.
There are
It's
enough
a death by a
conversations.
thousand cuts.
There are enough
Hey, who's
conversations
next?
within.
Ray, I want to ask you about a billion-dollar plan by the mayor of the city to put $1 billion into North St. Louis. Compare and contrast to Greater St. Louis, Inc., which is primarily looking at the Central West Corridor. She's saying, how about $1 billion north of Del Mar?
I'd prefer to call it a counteroffer rather than a plan, because I mean, we're talking about generations. I don't know how many tens of hundreds of millions of dollars per year have been assigned to the so-called Central West Corridor or places south. Certainly in the old days, South St. Louis got its fair share at the expense of North St. Louis. And so to me, what Tashara Jones is really doing is proposing a counteroffer that, hold my calls, we're really, I don't think it should be taken so literally, as some people probably will, but I think the fact that we need an investment, and most certainly Greater St. Louis and the business community writ large have shown zero commitment. For all the talk and all the great stuff about Greater St. Louis, there is no commitment north of St. Louis, north of Del Mar, period.
It's a number. It's $1 billion. It'd be great. I don't think I just don't see where that money is coming from. There's another round of federal support or something like that. I agree with you that you just say a number. I'd like to reach that number, but in reality, I don't see that happening. Unless she was going to be the mayor for the next like 4 more terms or something like that. But I don't know. I mean, it's not anything bad, but at the same time, it's kind of like San Francisco voted for possibly give all black people in San Francisco $5 million apiece in reparations. Well, that's not going to happen. So, like we can look, but it's a talking point on Fox, and it's a talking point now. Like, she wants to put $1 billion. Like, well, she said it would be nice to put $1 billion there. So I leave it at that.
Well, I hope it works, and I think it's necessary. I mean, there's some of the language that, like equitable economic opportunity downtown. And I thought, I'm not quite sure what it is, but certainly the north side needs a lot of help. And Mayor Jones was elected on the basis of, I'm going to try to even things out. So this is,
Again, exactly. She's keeping her promise. But I go back to the story that we were just talking about. That's going to be easier to do if you have a competent circuit attorney. That's
all right. Well, real quick, I just want to say that one of the things I catch myself kind of doing, $1 billion used to be a number that was staggeringly high.
Right.
I have learned that that's not as much money as it used to be.
When
now, I don't
we
have
were
$1
growing
billion.
up, we thought $1 million was a lot of money.
So, it's still really up there, but it is not as crazy as it once sounded.
Oh, I drove down Grand North all the way, and as I was driving down and looking at some of the neighborhoods that have been devastated, and I was thinking, to fix it even a block, I mean, it would be, $400,000 for this house, and to put Anderson windows in on this house would be $20,000. And I mean, you can go through a couple of $1 million and not even have the block fixed.
Well, I think that's true, but also we talked last week about public safety. and the money that our police officers are getting. Now police officers will be making $54,000 a year when they start. But over the weekend I was in Cleveland, and they're making close to $70 to start. And they're in the upper 60s in Columbus, Indianapolis, and Cincinnati.
All bigger, all not individual cities, part of the county, also all bigger than St. Louis. The bigger your metropolitan area, the more money you make. Now, I'm not saying that covers the entire difference, but always remember what you're talking about. We make more money than they do in Pine Bluff. Okay.
I think those are comparable cities.
Well, Charlie,
But they're
Cincinnati,
bigger.
they're bigger.
Columbus.
They're bringing in more money, and they're bigger. And Columbus is probably.
Well, we all agree with you, Charlie, that the police should be making more money. I mean, there's no argument there.
But now, if you're going to spend $1 billion,
No,
then
Charlie,
you should spend it on
she's
police.
talking about, no. She's talking about making an investment in a part of our community that has been the subject of disinvestment and a lack of equity. That word should speak for itself. For literally the decades, centuries, and she's right. I mean, it's leadership on her part. It's what she was elected to do, and I think it's great that she's bringing it up.
Ray, those comments will be the last ones before letters. Let's go to the old mailbag and see what people had to say about last week's show. Regarding visitors to St. Louis, consider that Missouri is a female slave state with draconian anti-abortion laws. Many people will not spend money in female slave states. Peace from Valerie Alverton Dixon. And we also heard from Tom Kirsting, rather. The speeding problem can be solved with speed bumps. Thanks, Tom. I believe that Arch visitor numbers are down because visitors can't drive along the riverfront past the Arch. Lenore K. Sullivan Boulevard has been closed to vehicular traffic from Laclede's Landing to south of the Arch for over 2 years. Thanks, Ray Bosenbecker. You can write us care of 9PBS 63108. We love those emails, Donnybrook at 9pbs.org, and those tweets. And you can also listen to us call the 9 line at 314-512-9094, and then listen to us on your favorite podcast source, Apple, Spotify, TuneIn, and Google Play. Thanks for joining us. The question is, are transgender rights in Missouri under attack? We're going to tackle that on Next Up. Alvin and I will be right back.
Donnybrook is made possible by the support of the Betsy and Thomas Patterson Foundation and the members of 9PBS.